Okay, it's Aaron Clark back here with you for another 30-minute paint job. It is Thursday night, and I've just left my Wargaming Club, and it's not quite yet ready for bed, so I thought I would just sit down and do a little bit of painting. I've got a new tool, I guess, to demonstrate. This is a wet palette. Basically, all it is it's a plastic tray with a folded up paper towel and soaked in water, and then there is a piece of parchment paper here on the tray, and that parchment paper stays moist but doesn't really let the water transfer through it, and keeps my paints nice and moist when I'm painting. In fact, if you haven't painted with a wet palette, it's kind of an interesting experiment. Maybe you'll like it, maybe it's not for you, but paints will stay moist and usable for, gosh, days, especially if you had like a cover for your wet palette. So a nice little useful tool. This camera's okay here. I'm going to paint here, probably work. All right, so I've still got some of these old funky D&D miniatures. I'm going to give a shot painting 30 minutes. And I've been painting a lot of wizards lately, so I thought I would give a more martial figure a try. Though the collection that I have for my buddy Dave, awful lot of wizards, mostly because I gave the duplicates to another buddy, Thomas, because I didn't need the duplicates. So I've got here a dwarf that I've touched with some water already. Should make the dry brushing a little challenging. I'm going to start my timer here, and for 30 minutes when I get the first bit of paint going. So let's see, we got some white. Got a moth around my lamp tonight. That's pretty annoying. I think I got it. All right, so I've got this dwarf. He's got a crossbow. Looks like some chainmail. Looks like I need my glasses. Crossbow, axe, beard. Boots and such. All right. Hey Alexa, set a timer for 20 minutes. All right, so we're just going to follow the same kind of techniques that I demonstrated in my last video. And again, here, these figures have been black primered. They arrived in my collection black primered. I don't normally black primer miniatures, but I find it hard to cover that black. Here I'm just dry brushing that black primer up white. Some painters might call this a zenithal primer, but with this quick technique that I'm going to do tonight, I find it really helpful in showing the detail in the model. And already I can see here what's happening with the beard, what's happening with the face, some of the equipment, just with, just a few seconds of effort. Now I'm going to try a couple of new techniques tonight. My buddy Max had suggested maybe a little bit of an ink wash to help bring out some of the detail. I'm not going to use any traditional ink washes tonight, but I will use a we call this stuff? And I'm just using my standard flesh tone, my go-to flesh tone here. Oh, I'm using a different brush tonight. That's interesting. More traditional dry brush. Oh, I gotta get my my paint retarder. Big deep shadow there in the crevice of the face, but that'll probably be cool. I just have to be careful when I paint in the eye, not blow it out like I did in the cleric in the last video. All right, I think that's okay for the flesh. Do the metals next. Here's one. Oh yeah, the wash I'm going to try tonight is a quick shade or a kind of a pre-prepared wash. Ink washes, when I learned how to paint with them were revolutionary, but I got stuck in this painting rut of base coating, washing, dry brushing, and doing that for all my models, and it got really frustrating, very lengthy and time consuming. And gosh, not 20 years ago, 20-ish years ago, I heard about this new technique, this new painting technique that a lot of historical wargamers were using called a dip. And with this method, they would take, they would just do simple base coats for their models, you know, very flat painting, and even flatter than what I'm doing here. And they would take those base coats and then they would actually submerge the model, dunk the model in a polyurethane wood stain, and then shake off the excess. That's where the dip term comes from. And all right, well, there's some metal. What I'm going to do with that cloak. Might be for the beard. What will we do? Probably eating away at time. I should just paint. A couple of random bottles of paint here. Guess you're getting a blue cloak, my friend. Clean up these brushes a little bit. A lot of times in, oops, I can't quite reach my vortex painter. That's our painter mixer. A lot of times when I'm painting like this, I found that I don't clean my brushes very well. So at the end of this session, I'll go back and I'll clean them up with the brush soap, and I'll show you what that all looks like here in a moment, or maybe even at the end of the video. This brush is pretty wet, but I think it'll be okay. Just work up the layers, layer upon layer upon layer. All right, so I was talking about that dip method, and when I had heard about this dip method, I was so fascinated. I was like, could that really be all you need to do to paint a miniature? Just simple base coats, like simpler than what I'm doing here, and just dunk it in this magical elixir. So I had to try it right away. I see I missed a little bit of the metal. So I went out to my local hardware store and found this specific brand and model, Minwax Poly Shades, Tudor Satin, number 360. And kind of a satin finish, wood stain that was sort of, I guess you could say, a lightish brown. More metal I missed. And I tried it. That dip, that Tudor Satin, it was amazing. I couldn't believe it. I painted a model really simply, and then I just dunked it in the stuff and shook off the rest, and it was like magic. I was and my painting just went through the roof because I could quickly paint models, run this dip process, and the result was pretty reasonably looking miniature. What's going on here with this blue? And that's pretty much the way I painted models for quite a while. Simple base coats, and this wood stain dip, which I later evolved into just being a wash. And all a wash is just thin down paint that you lay over and let fall into the recesses or the crevices of the model. All right, so I guess the cloak's done, armor's kind of done, metal's kind of done. We got some pouches and things and some boots. I'm gonna try for a dark brown on those boots. And dark brown. Let's not too dark, but I guess it'll do. Need that paint retarder. And maybe think about what's going on with his. Maybe those are his knobbly knees. Maybe just paint in some knobbly knees. A few other companies had come out with washes to sort of not compete, but to sort of have have a similar offering as what was going on with this wood stain wash, and focus a little bit more on the hobby painters. Citadel's got their contrast paints, which are very washy, but they're, and they're designed to be specific colors to be used in your army painting. Oh, that's a good looking knobbly knee. In fact, what I think I'll do is go ahead and hit this. And I'm gonna have to let it dry a little bit before I hit it with a little bit of a wash on the flesh, just so you can see what's happening there. Okay. Gotta think about what we're gonna do with the beard. I was thinking maybe red, but with that cool blue, I think I gotta go gray. I can't find a gray. You might hear what's going on in my paints. Get a little agitator inside these bottles. I had transferred all my paints over to these dropper bottles last year during the Great Shelter in Place. I like it a lot. I mean, everything's a common shape, common size, takes up less room on my painting table. Get some of that acrylic retarder. And I'm not mixing this acrylic retarder into my paints, but just loading it into my brush to keep the bristles from getting dry. I think I'm painting so fast tonight that it's not going to have a lot of opportunity to do that. I'm just going to come back and hit this gray with a little lighter gray. Reminds me of my buddy Scotty, who's got a hair and a beard like this. Big shaggy guy. I'm just touching real light with the brush, kind of running the brush across the model, across the ridges of the model, trying to let the paint hit the raised edges rather than the deeper recesses, so I can keep those shadows from the black primer. All right, I think that'll do. And let's grab our wood brown that we're going to use tonight. Oh, so I had to mention that tonight's Thursday. Thursday night is a meeting for a local wargaming club here in my hometown of San Jose, San Francisco Bay Area, and this group's been gathering for a little while at one of the club members' homes, who has a very nice bespoke gaming room, dedicated gaming room, and has a very large table that accommodates big games. And we had an English Civil War game tonight using a set of rules that I really, really like, called To the Strongest. And actually, this is a English Civil War variant of that game, called For King and Parliament. The English Civil War version of the game is a little more fiddly, but it gives a really great game. The fun thing about the game, the neat thing about the game, is they use cards instead of dice, and that's just super cool. Playing cards instead of dice, and when you want to have a unit in the game do something, you turn a card, and if you want to have the unit do something yet again, you got to turn a card that's got a higher value. And then when you're fighting, you usually need 6s or 8s when you're turning one of these playing cards, and you play with 2 decks of standard playing cards with the face cards removed, the Jack, Queen, King. You still keep the aces in because those are the low order cards. And yeah, each player then has one of these decks of cards, double-sized deck of cards. And yeah, it's really good fun. The other neat thing about the game is it's played on a grid instead of on an open table with lots of measuring and wheeling and moving and that kind of stuff. So that's really neat. Makes for a very easy game where you're just pushing models around into areas of the table instead of worrying about like precise measurements and whatnot. Alexa, stop the timer. Okay, there's my Alexa, stop the timer.
20-minute timer stopped on dining room.
Alexa, set a 10-minute time. Set a 10-minute timer. Cancel. Alexa, set a 10-minute timer. All right, let's clean this guy up. Maybe what I'll do instead of...
Second timer, 10 minutes, starting now.
Instead of going and finding another gray, I'll just mix in a bit of white with that first gray I had laid down. Ooh, that's awfully white. going to happen there and there and there. And the kind of bracelets. Okay, let's try that flash wash that we were talking about. A specific one. Wasted all my time looking for a specific wash that I can't find. We'll just use this one. This is a specific Citadel wash. Ooh, Citadel paints. Why is it called Games Workshop, I wonder? I mean, I know Citadel's like the old-fashioned stuff, but I didn't realize they were marketing their paints as Citadel. Weird. So you can see that that wash is very, very thin, and the pigment's pretty rich. So what I'm going to do here is just drop a little bit in on the face. You can see how it, and on the rest of the flesh. See how it sort of falls into the cracks and creates even more of a shadow. But this wash is a sepia. The thing about washes, you want to be careful that you don't pool, like what's happening here on the wrist, because it just leaves a big stain on the model when it dries. I've got some pooling here in the face, but I think that's okay. All right, that's good enough. Let's paint in the crossbow string. Cut over my slightly my more fine-tipped brush to do some of this final detail work. Maybe a little heavy there with the paint. I would have liked to have had it been a little lighter there, but I think we all get the idea what's going on. All right, that's probably enough. Do we just make the arrowheads? Sorry, the arrow fletchets, arrow feathers. Just gonna make those red maybe for simplicity. The best choice. I'm gonna lose use this cuff in the flesh a bit. It's not. It's gonna stand out. Okay. Not that great. Looks like he's got a bit of a belt there that I probably should have done before I did his beard. It's okay. Gotta figure out what's gonna happen with that. Feathers and maybe a little bit of different metals for the. I guess that's just going to be leather. It's got a leather bracelet. I'm having the same problem blending in with the flesh tone wrap. Go darker. Not bad. All right, so we need a little bit of a special metal. I guess like some such. Gotta paint the base. Trap. And I wanted to make that arrow kind of black. Pardon me, crossbow bolt. There, black. Come on, black. Maybe there is no arrow in that crossbow contraption. Maybe there is. I just painted it. I don't know what's going on over there. Messed it up. That's what I did. Alexa, stop the timer. Alexa, stop the timer.
10-minute timer stopped on dining room.
All right, well, there we go. Another 30-minute paint job. Alexa, stop the timer. Another 30-minute paint job. You can see what's happened here with the flesh in the face with the ink wash, and I think last two things I'm going to do is I'm going to try to touch in the eyes and touch in the red for the crossbow bolts, the fletching of the crossbow bolts. for the eyes. Maybe he'll get green eyes. Probably be cool. So when I'm doing eyes, I like to put a kind of a blob of paint on the tip of the brush so that I can just transfer that blob of paint pretty easily to the model. Oh, yeah, he's the dude abides, the dwarf abides. Oh, and I gotta paint the base. All right, a little bit of green. Maybe we'll let that dry while we do the base. And that model is done in just over 30 minutes. It's pretty good. I think pretty good way for me to wrap up my evening before I get ready to start my Friday and my weekend. A couple of games planned for the weekend. D&D game, online D&D game. That'll be fun. We're playing a great old module called The Black Tower by Minkima Press, I think. And this module, this adventure is free for download from the Minkima Press webpage. In fact, they're still in operation and still publishing, I guess, some of their game material. They had some city books and things like that. But this module, this Black Tower adventure, was written in 1981. Probably written before then, published in 1981, and it's super cool. So check it out if that's your jam. You see, this is a pretty big brush. This is a 2, but it holds a very nice point, so it can be used to can be used to keep missing. I keep hitting the top of the eye. More paint. Too much. All right, I guess that'll have to do. The dude abides. The dwarf abides. All right, that's another finished model. Pretty cool stuff. Little ink wash for the flesh tones. Experimenting with some different techniques here, all in that 30 minutes. Still working on this just kind of black primer and just layering paint up on top of that, using sort of quasi-dry brushing techniques. Very light touches and very quick and easy. So hope you guys enjoyed watching that, or maybe learned a few things. Got inspired to do some painting yourself, and maybe even paint something in 30 minutes. I'm having a blast. Oh, real quick, we talked about brush cleaning, so that's what I'm going to do for the next few minutes. I've got this brush cleaner. It's just like a soap in a jar in a plastic dish, and I just put a little bit of water on my brush and then just rub it over, create a lather on this, on the bristles, and work that in a bit, and that kind of cleans and conditions the brush, and helps to remove any of that dried or stuck on pigment. I think it probably does more conditioning for the brush than anything, but it helps them hold up. Yeah, so that's what I'm gonna go spend the rest of this next 10 or 15 minutes, not even that, before I knock off for the evening. All right, thanks, take care. See you next time. Round 4. What will we paint next?